Dr. Carol Francis Talk Radio Show. Let's make life happen together with authors, scientists, researchers, both inside the box and outside the box of understanding so that you can live a life full of your success, curiosity, enjoyment, happiness, and richness of life in every respect. Let's go beyond our limits, and let's help others go beyond their limits as well. Welcome.
Hello, everybody. This is Dr. Carol Francis on Make Life Happen. It's going to be a brilliant day and a wonderful program because your life is going to be changed. Perhaps you already have had out-of-body experiences of all sorts of different sorts. Perhaps afterlife or death, as they now say, the near-death experience. Perhaps you have floated out of your body during an operation. Perhaps you've actually practiced the art of astral projection or remote viewing. And maybe in the context of meditation or mindfulness practices, you have found yourself being able to elevate yourself beyond your biological being into some other state. Or perhaps you're in a frame of mind where this is all very bizarre, very beyond what we would normally expect, and yet you're willing to entertain the possibility, because the possibility of you being able to live a life, both in your body and outside your body, will expand your sense of who you are and what powers you have to be truly living life as dynamically as you would like to. And in order to bring this home to you in the most effective way possible, Dr. Steve G. Jones has accepted the invitation to participate, and he is going to share with you the whys, the hows, the science behind it, the experimentation behind it, in order for you to be able to really go into the process, even if you're a skeptic or it just seems beyond what you can do. So Dr. Steve G. Jones, welcome to the Dr. Carol Francis Show. I'm so glad you could be here.
Well, thank you. Great to be here.
Tell us a little bit about your experience with astral projection. We're going to start with your stories, but then we're going to move on to the skepticism and the question and inquiries about it. So what is your experience with astral projection?
Well, I started getting involved in it when I was a teenager. I was in Riverside Military Academy in Gainesville, Georgia. My parents had sent me to military school. You know, a lot of parents threatened to send them away, but mine actually did. And so I felt kind of trapped. And I started reading a book by a guy named Dr. Tuesday Lobsang Rampa, who said in his book that he had been a Tibetan monk, and he was channeling that energy. And I just kept reading, and he was talking about things such as reading auras and astral projecting and working with chakras, and I didn't know if it was real or not until I had a dream one night. And the dream that I had was that I was out after 10 o'clock. That's tapped. That's lights out. You're supposed to be in your room in military school after 10 p.m. And I had a dream that I was out of my room, and I was very concerned because I thought I would get in trouble. And there was another kid with me who I would never associate with. He was one of the, quote unquote bad kids, always getting in trouble. And we were there, and we were concerned we were going to get caught. And so we hid behind a bus. Well, the next day I saw him at school, since we all lived there. It was a military school. And I said, "What did you dream about?" And he said, "Well, I dreamt about you." And I said, "Can you be more specific?" He described the exact situation. And so
amazing.
It was at that time that I realized I was onto something real.
It's these verifications of experiences like this that led me into wanting to know more about astral projection as well. But when you use the word real, I really do think that is a key thing I want to land on. The science behind astral projection, the research behind astral projection is still not caught up to the research behind biology or medical interventions or pharmaceuticals. It's just not caught up to that. So therefore, how can an individual know that astral projection or out-of-body experiences are not just part of our imagination?
One of the best ways to do it, I think, is to just have a friend write something on a card, like an index card or a Post-it note, something of that size, just a number or a symbol or something, and to put that in their room at night, perhaps on their dresser. And then for you, to the person interested in quote-unquote proving this, traveling in the astral world to their room, seeing that number or symbol and reporting back to them what it was the next day and seeing if they verify that.
And has that happened to you?
Yes.
What was it like?
Well, I was the one doing the reporting, so it was very shocking for my friend. he said, "Well, you must have somehow snuck in my house, and gone into my room at night, and looked at it. There's really no other way you could have done that." And that's not the way I did it. I didn't I didn't have to go to his house and his room to see it. So it's very interesting when you have some sort of evidence like that. Now, that's not something that would hold up in a research paper. That's just not good enough. But it's something that would hold up to an individual to convince you personally that what you're getting into is real.
Okay, so beyond those sorts of experiences, which I whenever I have taught soul journeys, right there in the moment I say, okay, you're going to go and travel to such and such a place, and I will just give the general parameters. They'll select out of the general parameters what they're going to do. And then in the process of that, they will go off, come back, and text the person they have visited. Where are you at? Give me some feedback. And then they will afterwards report, yep, that's where they were. I saw them where they were, doing what they were doing. And every time I hear this, my jaw drops. Like, really, this is so real. And if it is so real, Steve, why are we not using this as more of our power, more of our expression of who we are?
Well, I guess people look at it as sort of like, well, we all have similar dreams, something like that. I don't think that the general public realizes how to classify this or how to make it practical. Most people don't believe in it. Most people have not experienced conscious astral projection, so there remain just a few groups here and there who are into it, and a lot of isolated individuals who are into it. A lot of people buy products on the internet about it, but they usually do that in the privacy of their own homes, not working within a network of a support group of any kind. So, and then I think a lot of people are concerned about talking about it with others, those at work and friends, because it just sounds so out there. So I think for these reasons it hasn't gained more traction.
So I know that you are a founder of one of the science organizations. I'm not sure exactly what that does. I'd love to hear. Are you engaging in any sort of empirical data collection along these lines about astral projection or out-of-body experiences?
We have in the past. We're not currently doing that, but we definitely have had interest in that in the past. And one of the interesting studies that was done a while ago, before I started getting involved in this, in fact, I believe it was in the 70s, were studies just simply taking the weight of a person's body before and during astral projection and seeing if there's a difference. The theory there being that there is a measurable weight to the soul. Now, this is fascinating to me. We have not engaged in these studies, nor have I seen the data on these, and I don't know who has done these studies, so I'm not able to speak to their validity. But that's something fascinating that we will probably want to explore at some point. And it would need to be, of course, a very precise scale measuring very slight nuances in weight differences. And so the idea is you put someone on a scale, have them lie down, have them consciously astral project, have them signal you somehow when they are astral projecting, and then notice if there's a difference in the weight of the body. Therefore, potentially offering some sort of credibility to the idea that the soul is separate from the body and there is something measurable going on. It's that sort of empirical data that we're going to need moving forward if this is going to become part of the mainstream knowledge of human anatomy, if you will.
Exactly. Okay, so we can move into the process of how to do astral projection. But before we do that, you've mentioned on an incredibly good, solid program that you offer, the Art of Astral Projection, which is at theartofastralprojection.com, that you do discuss that theta brainwaves is the most ideal way, ideal state of mind in order to be able to access yourself or move yourself into this process. Have we studied what happens to individuals when they're in Theta in terms of cognitive process, the brain mapping, the neurological signals? Have we done any of that yet?
There has been a lot of that done, not by myself. That's something that's done by, I think a lot of psychologists are very into that, into researching that as a branch of psychiatry that looks at that in particular. So there is a fairly robust body of knowledge that is outside of my realm of expertise, unfortunately, but it does exist if anyone wanted to access those journals.
Now, this has also colored your metaphysical perspectives. Is that correct?
Yes, it's actually helped to mold them in large part because I didn't necessarily have a metaphysical perspective before I started getting into astral projection and seeing auras and so forth.
So what are some of the paradigms or the approaches to the world beyond who we are as human beings? Have you integrated or advanced in your own life and in your own practice that relates to astral projection so that people can understand the power this has, the ability to change perspectives that this has?
Well, absolutely. My mother passed away when I was 6. She died of leukemia. She wanted to see my 6th birthday, and a couple of days later, unfortunately, she passed away. And I remember my father coming to me and telling me about that, and my attempts to visualize what he was talking about. I didn't really. He said she's with God now in heaven, is how he put it. I didn't really understand what that meant. It was the first time in my life that outside of TV, that I had come into contact with this concept of death. I didn't realize that people passed away, and I didn't know what that meant. And so ever since that point in my life, I had been struggling with understanding it. Then as I grew older, I guess around 8 or 10, you start to figure out what death means. But at the time, I remember visualizing it. I remember thinking that her soul would be like a board, like a piece of plywood, in fact, a small piece of plywood that would fit in her body. And when she died, that board would come out and lift upward. That was my visualization of the soul leaving the body upon death as a 6-year-old. And it's really not that far off. I don't know where the plywood concept came from, but aside from that, it's very similar to what actually happens, which is that the soul does leave the body. Now, when we look at astral projection, the soul leaves the body also, but it's connected to the body through the silver cord, connecting the umbilicus of the astral body to the umbilicus of the physical body, the belly button, if you will. And so we come back to it. We come back to the physical body, although we are able to travel in the astral world. And upon death, that cord is severed, and we just don't come back. So that concept and understanding what happens, as I discovered as a teenager, when I started reading about these concepts, that's really helped me immensely in just understanding life itself. This is not the be-all, end-all. This is not the everything. This three-dimensional existence we have here is not the whole picture. There's something else going on. And just as I believe all the major religions of the world, and I was a preacher for a while for the Church of Christ, I should point out, from 1990 to 1995, as I got into more of a religious quest. But I believe all the major religions of the world teach this concept that you are more than your body, you are a soul, you are eternal. Life does go on. And so if nothing else, there's a tremendous amount of comfort in that.
The process of being able to be not dead and alive in this physical body, and then being able to move to places, all sorts of different places, including places where individuals have died, and we can go and visit them. And you mentioned that in some of your work. What other places, or what are the collection of places that you would encourage people to look into investigating?
Well, I think people should understand, first of all, that when you're in the astral world, you can see the three-dimensional world, meaning everything in your everyday existence, your home, your car, your place of work, your bank, the restaurant you go to, when you go out to eat. All of that you can see from the astral world. It's not part of the astral world, but you can still see it from the astral world. Sort of like being underwater. You can still look out and see, though not perfectly clearly, you can see people's faces. You can see buildings on the shore. If you're in the water and let's say you're in a pool at a hotel and you look out from the water, you can still see the building, the people, and the lounge chairs. That's sort of like seeing the three-dimensional world from the astral world. But as you swim around in the pool, or better yet, if you're swimming in the ocean or something, a more interesting body of water, you can also see what's in the ocean. And that would be equivalent to the things that exist in the astral world, the astral structures, which exist at a higher vibratory rate. And that's why we don't see them in the three-dimensional world, because they are that higher vibration. So the places that are interesting would be, one of the places that I think people would find most interesting would be Egypt. And just seeing the difference between the pyramids of Egypt and the astral structures of Egypt. That's very interesting. And anytime you go to one of these places where you have something really old and really fascinating in the three-dimensional world, when you look at the astral counterpart, which there doesn't have to be one, but many times there is an astral counterpart, it's far more elaborate and far more interesting than what actually exists. It's also not subject to decay. So if I were to put together a tourist map for someone in the astral world, I'd say make your first stop Egypt.
That's an interesting suggestion. Okay, my first experience that I can verify of astral projection, I actually went to the Mir space station. I had not a clue of what was going on. I was so immersed in my life, raising kids, working, incredibly busy. Didn't even know the Mir station was up there. I'm embarrassed as I can say to admit that, but it's just the truth of it. So here I was doing some astral projection, kind of experimenting with it, and I found myself on the space station. Again, not knowing where I was, but I could see the astronauts, I could see the cosmonauts, I could see the configuration of the station, and there's some emergency had happened, and I could see what the situation was. I started yelling at the astronauts, do this, do this, do this. Okay, so I came back in my body kind of saying, oh, wow, I have such a vivid imagination. Whew, interesting. Go to sleep. So that was kind of the way it was. The next morning when I woke up, driving in the car, turned on NPR radio, they had this announcement about this amazingly complicated situation that happened on the Mir station the night before. And I was in shock because what they were allowed to describe so paralleled to what I had actually seen. And the astronauts layout, what I was later able to investigate, this is just mind-boggling. But it was after that, Steve, that I said to myself, this is not a realm to be taken lightly. This is not a procedure or process to be thought of as just a game. It can be that, loads of fun, very intriguing, but this is one of our potentials, one of our capacities. And as you said, every single religious writing somewhere in there has one of their teachers, at the very least, trying to describe this sort of process to individuals and say, this is yours to experience. This is yours in the bodily form to experience. So I don't want people to withhold from themselves the opportunity to really go forward with this. And that's why I reached out to you and said, please, now teach us. I know you have a wonderful system, but teach us some of the steps, if you wouldn't mind, for people to take hold of, including the materials that you offer.
Oh, sure. The system that I've developed, Vishen Lakiani, he's a friend of mine. He runs a company called Mind Valley in Malaysia, and he called me about 6 or 7 years ago, and he was just getting started with this Mind Valley concept and getting authors and publishing them. He saw that I had a lot of hypnosis stuff and some astral projection stuff online. And he asked me if I would be willing to produce a very elaborate and comprehensive system for him that he could then get out to the public to help them learn astral projection. So I started working on it, and it took about a year because the product he wanted was the system that he wanted was just very elaborate and all-encompassing. So I believe it's about 18 hours of material covering a lot of things. Now, I come at it from the premise of using hypnosis because I'm a hypnotherapist. I want people to understand you don't have to do it that way, but it works that way, and it's an easy way to do it. It's sort of like if you're going into surgery, well, they could sedate you or not, but it's going to go a lot more easily if they sedate you. So It's going to go a lot more easily if you use hypnosis because you'll be calm, and unlike sedatives, it's all natural. So you put yourself into a hypnotic trance, and then you're able to calm down enough to be able to do this. A lot of times people get too anxious about it. So I teach you how to clear your chakras, raise your kundalini, which is the energy that powers the whole concept, and then to slowly, over a few weeks, get different body parts out into the astral world, to realize there's an exact replica of you in your astral body. So you have an astral arm, astral left leg, astral right leg, etc. And so you can work on getting them out, and then you get your entire body out. And then I give you some instructions about where you can go, and you're kind of on your own at that point. But the program is available at theartsofastralprojection.com, theartsofastralprojection.com, and that's where we created this. There's also a fairly robust and active Facebook community link to that, just to keep everyone who is working through this, just to keep them encouraged. We have people on there who are further down the road, who have been into it for a few weeks and are already having success. So they are there to give tips to other people in the community to help them out.
Okay, that's wonderful. Again, folks, theartofastralprojection.com. We're talking to Dr. Steve G. Jones. Dr. Steve G. Jones, how do people contact you elsewise for hypnosis as well? We'll just do a caveat right now, and then we'll go back to the discussion. But how do they contact you?
Well, just my website, which is just my name, stevegjones.com. So that's stevegjones.com.
Thanks. When individuals emerge out of their body for the first time, I know that you discussed that you went through kind of a birthing process. It felt like the shackles of your physical body were somehow being disengaged in order to be able to free you up to travel. Is that a common experience? Should people kind of anticipate there's going to be something like that? Or does it vary per personality? Or what's the variance of this?
It's all over the map. It really does. Some people just kind of glide right out. Some people just find themselves on the other side of the room. Some people have a bit of a struggle, as a baby being born, which was similar to my experience. It really depends. And as people, and I don't know what it depends on. It is multifactorial, I'm sure. I'm sure it depends on personality, as you mentioned, depends on their situation, depends on their belief system also. There are probably a lot of factors that contribute to it. We're all able to do this. It's just our belief system sometimes gets in our way and causes us to have results that vary in terms of how we get out the first time. But my experience was similar to a birthing experience.
How do you differentiate astral projection from an out-of-body experience or remote viewing or shamanic soul journeys? Or are they all similar in your mind? Or is lucid dreaming akin to it? How do all these kind of connect or not connect from your perspective?
A lot of them do connect. You have to realize that people who are getting into this have to realize that there is also the ability for you to dream these things. For example, your experience in the Mir space station, you thought it was a dream, but you verified that it was not a dream. It just is, you could dream about that. Obviously, that was not a dream, but there's nothing stopping you from dreaming about being on a space station. I can dream that tonight, and it can just be a pure fantasy dream. Now, the fact that you heard verification of that shows me that you were astral projecting, but not every dream about an experience is an astral experience. So we need to understand that one of the ways you can really tell is the way you feel in the dream. For example, my first time astral projecting, I felt like my body was just energy. I was just made out of energy. It feels different when you're astral projecting. It doesn't feel like you're a passive observer. It feels like you are vibrating. Another way to figure this out is by, as I've said, have third-party verification where you look at a number or something and you report that back to them and see if that was the number or the symbol that they put out.
And in terms of psychic process, people going into psychic readings or looking as if they can tell what's going on in another location, is that mind travel versus an astral body travel, or do we know?
Well, that's a lot of times that's called remote viewing. A friend of mine named Bert does that quite a bit. He's very much into that. In fact, he developed a program for Mind Valley as well about remote viewing. And when I was talking to him about a year ago in Hawaii, we talked a little bit about this. And some of it can be done, if not all of it, can be done without leaving your body. You do not have to leave your body. You can do it within your body. So remote viewing, although you can do it in the astral world, doesn't have to be done in the astral world. Also, I should touch on something you mentioned earlier, which is lucid dreaming. And this is a question I get all the time about lucid dreaming. Is lucid dreaming the same as astral projection? And what's the difference if it's not the same? Well, a dream is a dream. And even if it's a lucid dream, it's just a dream. And astral projection is an actual experience that you have. And so when we have a lucid dream, we suddenly become aware of what's going on. And if people haven't seen the movie Waking Life, I recommend that. I don't. I'm not tied to the movie. I'm not the producer or anything. I don't get any credits if anyone sees it. But the movie Waking Life is a great movie which shows how lucid dreaming works, and it shows some tests to figure out if you are lucid dreaming, if you think you're lucid dreaming. Lucid dreaming just means you kind of wake up in a dream. You become aware, but you're still in a dream. And so you can do a lot of things. It's kind of neat. And so one of the things I recommend in the movie is go to a light switch and flip it on and off. If you flipping a light switch on and off doesn't affect the lighting in the room in the way that it should, then you're probably in a dream. So you do things like that, and you find out that you're not really in reality. So you're not astral projecting either. You're dreaming. So lucid dreaming is nothing more than being in a dream and becoming aware of the dream. Astral projection is different from that, because astral projection means that you are out of your body and you are able to actually do things in the astral world. Now, that's the technical definition, and there is a line of delineation there. One is a dream and one's reality. However, sometimes people think they're having a lucid dream when, in fact, they're astral projecting, or they think they're astral projecting when, in fact, they're having a lucid dream. So that's why these little tests become important. In a lucid dream, you wouldn't be able to figure out something somebody wrote somewhere and report it back to them because you're just in your own head dreaming. But in astral projection, you would. So that's why these validation tests are really handy.
I know that when I went to the MER station, I was actually awake. I knew where my body was. I was very conscious of my surroundings and the people that were in the room at the time while I was doing this exercise of astral projection. And I think that compared to other events or other people, not everybody has that kind of dual consciousness, and yet I think that's possible. And I'm wondering what you think the difference is, like the Hindu bifurcation or the bilocation process, where they are conscious, they're in one location, and they are also embodied in some sort of visual, I don't know what you would call it, some sort of, people can see them. So this bilocation consciousness, how does that compare to astral projection? I mean, and I don't know how far we're going to get off the map on this, but I'm so curious about what you think about that.
Well, I don't really know how that works. I'm not that familiar with the bilocation process. You'd probably need to bring someone else in on the call who, or look forward to an interview in the future with someone else who is aware of that. unfortunately, I'm not able to speak about that because I don't know anything about it.
Okay. I totally appreciate you knowing where you begin and where you end on that regard. Michael Harner of Shamanic Foundation decided decades ago that he was going to collect all the people who did shamanic journeying, which I think includes all these variations and forms, soul retrieval and soul journeying. I mean, just to me, it seems like there's a coalescence of experiences here that have so much divergence that we just really don't know. But he decided that he was going to get everybody to declare where they went, who they saw, what they experienced, and try to map out the soul universe, so to speak. Has anyone ever done that with astral projection, where people map out and try to compare experiences, like, say, to Egypt or the Mer Station? Has anybody done that or proposed that on any of your services or Facebook sites?
Well, that was done years ago by a religious group called Ekankar. I believe they're currently, or at least, have you heard of them?
Yes, I have.
Okay. Well, Ekankar is a religion. It's what's called Ek. They were led by Sri Harold Klemp when I met with them in the 80s. I don't know if he's still around. They always have a new leader if one passes away, so you'd have to check it out. But Ekankar, I went to one of their functions in the 80s. I really didn't even know what it was that I was going to. I was just into, going to everything. And so they came to town, and I was at the University of Florida, and they had set up something at a hotel, and I went over there and saw and listened to a lecture on it. And they have books describing the physical layout of the astral realms, not only the ones you can access from the earth plane, but higher vibrations. So they have numerous books with tremendous detail. So I'm not pushing any religion, and I don't know anything about Ekankar other than the fact that they believe in astral projection. It's a big part of their religion, and they have books on it. So if you want to get into astral geography, I recommend at least checking out their books.
Have you done your own astral geography?
Have I done what? I'm sorry.
Your own astral geography, your own mapping of places that you've gone and things you've experienced.
Not in the Lewis and Clark sense. I haven't taken exact coordinates, but I have. And I put this in the program. I have looked at things and I have described them, the things that I think are interesting, but nothing in terms of getting some kind of measurement. Measurements can be difficult because you're not able to bring a tape measure with you or anything like that, for example, or any other large-scale laser type, things that surveyors use now are more sophisticated when they set them up on a tripod and figure out how long things are, where they begin and end, and so forth. Survey equipment is not something that you'll have access to in the astral world, so nothing fancy, but I have done a few descriptions.
Yeah. Okay, so now we're talking about moving outside the body. I decided recently, and I want to see what you think about this, that these sorts of experiences are so powerful that they must have the potential to create healing on the material realm, the psychological realm. Since I'm a psychologist, I also go in that, as well as relationships. So I thought I'd experiment with my body. So I decided, why not go astral projecting into the cells of your body so that no realm is out of my reach. That's what I want to believe, so I encourage myself to experiment with this. So I wanted to know what uses of this you have thought about or employed or experimented with in terms of bodily healing or moving into the cellular level of investigation.
I haven't done any of that. I think that's fascinating. I really hadn't thought about it. I think that's a great idea. I'd be fascinated to hear more about that.
Okay. Well, we won't do it today. So you also mentioned on your site, we can, but you also mentioned on your site that the astral projection experience, it liberates you to have a heightened state of your consciousness. And if we're more conscious, if we're more conscientious and more aware of the diversities that are going on, how have you used that to create healing in yourself, your clients, your colleagues, your friends? How has that created some sort of transformation in people's lives?
Well, once you're in the astral world, a lot of things become a lot easier. For example, seeing an aura, seeing your own aura, seeing other people's auras. So on a macroscopic level, and I appreciate the work you're doing on a microscopic level, but on a macroscopic level, you can see areas of the body that might need some attention. And once you learn how to understand the colors of the aura, which is also covered in the program at theartsofastralprojection.com, it's easy to figure out what's going on. So I found that it's been of tremendous value to be able to astral project, because a lot of these things that people work on that they consider difficult, such as psychic abilities, reading minds, and so forth, not in an invasive way, but just having a communication with a lover, for example, or a close friend at a psychic level, that becomes easier in the astral world. Seeing auras becomes easier. Everything becomes a lot easier because you're just pure spirit. And you also get over the I don't believe in this notion, because you're already in the astral world. So your confidence rises tremendously, and that's a lot of times the barrier that people have between their ability and their inability to do something is how much they believe in it. So I have found tremendous benefit for myself and clients in that regard.
You also connected to exploring the Akashic records and Edgar Cayce using it to cultivate people's understanding, healings, the cultivation of money, intimacy, sexual intimacy. Talk about any of these aspects that come to mind in terms of how people can change their life in this material world by way of accessing astral projection abilities.
Sure. Well, a lot of times people who are in, let's talk about physical intimacy first. I think that's a really interesting topic for people. Most people are interested in that, or have at least had some experiences with that. A lot of times what people report in terms of intimacy is that they wish they could sort of crawl inside the body of the other person. Physical intimacy only goes so far, and feeling a soul connection can be kind of difficult in a physical sense with physical intimacy. And it's acknowledged by the people engaged in that their bodies have limits. That my body ends here and yours begins there. It's a set boundary in the physical world, and that's not going to change. But in the astral world, that boundary is quite a bit different. You can actually bridge that gap between the separate location of each body, and so it becomes far more intimate. And that's why people prefer things such as the intimacy that you can have in the astral world. It's not the same as the physical world, so there are pluses and minuses. You're not going to, for example, create a child in the astral world with astral intimacy. But on the other hand, you are going to get closer to the person literally on a soul level. So that's one of the realms that it helps in. Also, if we take a complete turn from that and look at finances, people wonder, well, how is astral projection going to help my finances? Well, a lot of times when people astral project, they're able to network a lot better, because they're able to reach out on a soul level to some of the groups or people that they would like to meet. So you can start to create those connections in the astral world. Meeting with people in their astral body is a really good way to get to know someone. Now, you never use this to be invasive and to go somewhere where you're not invited. I think people should keep that in mind. Never go where you're not invited. And that's going to keep you safe. But if you have access to people in the astral plane who are already astral projecting, then you can meet with them there, just like you would meet with someone on the street and form a connection, which will then transfer over into a connection in the physical realm. So, for example, a job opportunity or a business opportunity or something along those lines can transfer to the physical aspect of that in the everyday life of the person.
Powerful implications here. Can you manipulate things in the material world from an astral point of view? Can you have impact on those sorts of things?
You can, and again, I would apply the same concept of not going where you're not invited. Also, don't manipulate anything that you're not invited to manipulate. Such as people's lives or economic situations or anything official. But you can work on yourself. That's always your best bet. Work on yourself. I mean, once you're astral projecting, you can see that there's a lot more to this life than just what you've been seeing in your three-dimensional world, and you can sort of get together some plans that would be a little bit more all-encompassing. I believe that the great contributions to the world recently have taken this global consideration, such as Facebook, Google, Twitter, LinkedIn, all of these things that are very recent creations. If you think about them, they're taking a global perspective. They're looking at product creation in terms of how many people can we actually help by creating one thing. And so you start to get perspectives like that.
You're talking about an ethics, like we need to have an ethical code when we walk into these places. I think any time that we kind of cross into a whole new power, we have to kind of go, whoa, with this power, am I to be trusted? Because that's one of the reasons I think we stay out of our powers, that we're not so sure we're to be trusted. Sad to say. But nonetheless, to wonder, contemplate, well, what power do I have to affect a positive change? And what right do I have to determine what I think that positive change would be? They're dilemmas, but once you have the power to affect something, you need to contemplate, okay, so if I can do this, I need to do something about this. So, for example, I was in a spiritual group, and I said, if we could affect what's going on in Syria or in Egypt, and you could have some powerful impact on the leaders there so that people were not being slain or hurt or genocide, would you go do that? Would you take your astral capacities and influence what's going on? Would you go do that? So, Steve, I'm going to pose that same question to you. Would you, with your powers, your knowledge, influence international circumstances?
Well, I stay out of politics and I stay out of international affairs and so forth. The more I learn about politics and international affairs, the more I realize I don't know, and I don't really understand, what's going on and why it's going on. Usually, there's a lot more than meets the eye when you look at an international situation. So the way I look at that is, if I was running a business, which I am, and someone looked from the outside and said, "Hey, I know the answer. I know, what's causing the bottlenecks here, and what's slowing down things there, and what's causing the lack of communication there. I'll just come in and spend a day, and I'll fix everything." Well, I guarantee if they did that, they would mess everything up because they don't really understand the internal workings of my company. And so I look at it the same way. If I have an idea of how there can be peace in the Middle East, for example, which is a concept that I've heard about ever since I was a kid, and I went in and I had my agenda and I was going to affect things in a certain way. I guarantee that I would do more harm than good because I really don't have a full understanding of everything that's going on.
So again, it's the ethics of saying, even though I can do the astral projection, I must recognize I have limitations here. Let's not mingle or cause complications. Let's not see ourselves as omnipotent, even though we have this additional capacity.
Right, exactly. I mean, it's kind of like the Matrix, with Neo. If you watch that, the trilogy, and he obviously a fictional character, but his development, his fictional development in the trilogy is similar to someone's development in the world of astral projection. And fortunately, he realizes the old slogan, with great power comes great responsibility, and so he uses his powers for good. Now, obviously, he has an agenda. He's out to do something, and he eventually figures out how he can work within the system to affect positive change, and that's sort of the whole resolution of the trilogy. But he, it takes that sort of mindset to realize, what you can do and versus what you should do. And I would definitely suggest to people that they err on the side of staying out of other people's business.
Again, I would wonder about this. I had a friend of mine who is producing a movie about the walk in Spain. It's a spiritual, progress, a pilgrimage. And she called or contacted me in startled. She said, I'm so amazed at what I am understanding is going on in Europe, and I'm concerned about the powers that are going on here. And she was overtaken by the experience of that. And instead of being able to walk in her power, because she has a lot of different tools as well, she was walking in the consciousness of how big governments can be and influence in an antagonistic way the human existence. And it caused me to really ponder, we spend so much time being small about our humanity, that these sorts of abilities, astral projection, remote viewing, let's face it, the United States government tried to use remote viewing in order to be able to deal with the Cold War situation in Russia, and vice versa. There's so much utilization of these in the military aspects of it. And then I go to really kind of a sour moment in our history, and that was Hitler. And Hitler was incredibly immersed in occult studies, including what we're talking about, which in those days was called the occult, and now is not, thankfully. But he tried to use these types of powers in addition to all of his other influences. So, Steve, it makes me wonder, what are we possibly not utilizing because we are timid about intermingling or messing things up? It's a moral question about these powers. Sorry to put you on the spot there.
No, that's fine. And I have heard that as well, that Hitler was very involved in just using everything he could to gain the power that he wanted. He was looking into all sorts of things. He was very much in the mysticism and the metaphysical world. Obviously, he had a very strong physical presence as well, and they were manufacturing tanks and planes and guns and so forth, and training soldiers. So he was just coming at it from every possible angle that he could think of in order to make the Third Reich, the one that finally took and the one that lasted. Thank goodness his efforts didn't work. But if we look at, metaphysical investigation at the governmental level, I don't have any insider information, and I'm not really too interested in what governments do and so forth, but I know just from looking at what the government does over time that they're very forward thinking. All governments are, and they have to be in order to survive and be competitive. And I can guarantee everyone, without knowing it, I still know it without having verified it, that whatever there is in the metaphysical world that can give a strategic advantage to any country, they will investigate that to the extent of their ability. I mean, look at even something on a smaller scale. Look at police stations. If police stations have a murder to solve and they're just butting their heads against each other and they don't know what to do, they'll call a psychic, and they'll have the psychic come in and see what they can do. And because they have the why not attitude, well, why not give this a shot? So because of that, and because governments have tremendous resources and they can create entire programs for this, I'm sure they look into these things. So I would rest assured that whatever country you happen to live in, whoever's listening to this, your government is working within the realms of its capabilities to explore metaphysical powers and so forth in terms of what it can do for the people of that country in terms of protecting them, advancing their agendas, and just staying as a predominant power.
Okay. So thanks for pulling it all of it, that metaphysical package in there. So now we as individuals, Steve, we're listening to you, and we know that you are one of our teachers or masters or informants about what some of these metaphysical talents or tools or techniques are, and that you pull it in terms of NLP or hypnosis and way beyond those experiences. So remind us again our own personal powers, our own personal capacity to reach beyond the limitations of our body or our now or our moment into the metaphysical realms and integrate it all together. And if you don't mind using examples of people you know without breaking confidentiality or of your own life, I think this would help people realize this is truly available, accessible, and usable by them in their everyday life.
Sure. Well, what's that?
No, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. Well, due to the nature of my job, as a hypnotherapist, and someone who has created a program on astral projection, I have access to, a lot of people who have this interest. They email my office or they call the office or I see them as clients and they have an interest in astral projection. So I've seen a lot of success stories with this. So my data is kind of skewed because they're sort of around me, the people who are interested in it and having success with it. But yeah, we've had this art of astral projection. We've had this out for a number of years now, and we've gotten a lot of feedback and a lot of discussion about it. And there have just been all sorts of success stories with people reaching their financial goals because they're able to have more of a global view of what's going on, with people working on themselves to resolve health issues. Now, anytime someone even thinks they have a health issue, I recommend going to the doctor. That's what I do. I go to a medical doctor first. And then if you want to look into other things, the blessings of the medical doctor, then do so. But you have to realize that Western medicine has come a long, long way. And a lot of times we go looking for metaphysical solutions to things when actually medicine has it worked out for us in a much easier way. So I always do that first, and I recommend that other people do as well. But there are some things that are beyond the scope of Western medicine. They just throw their hands up and they say, "We're not there yet. We don't know what that is. We have a broad classification for it, but we don't really know what to do for you other than make you as comfortable as possible while you're suffering with it." In those instances, using something like astral projection has been of value to people, and I've had feedback on that. People getting into the astral world, looking at their bodies, figuring out where the challenge area is, and starting to send energy to it, for example. So there are a lot of situations like that where astral projection really comes through.
Okay. Do you have stories or people, really land us in our everyday moments here?
Okay. Let's see. Well, I have people all the time who I work with, usually online, and usually they ask for support by email, but they're having challenges getting out of their physical bodies, and they start to not believe anymore because it's just so difficult for them because they've made it difficult. And so one specific instance I remember a couple of weeks ago, a lady was just sort of getting an arm out and then it was going back in, and she was about to give it up. She said it just wasn't for her. And what I recommended was just being more calm. She was just, and this happens to a lot of people, she was just pushing, got to get out of my physical body. And because of that, she's creating anxiety, and anxiety works against astral projection. You have to be calm in order to do it. That's why you do it so easily when you're sleeping. That's one of the reasons. And so just by, a series of emails, I was able to calm her down, able to teach her some breathing techniques, then she was able to do it. Now she's able to successfully astral project.
Okay. You also say that people use astral projection to visit the dead. And so I'll speak to my own testimony. My mother recently passed, and we had a really tight connection. I was having dreams about her before passing and about relatives that she would see, dreams, visits. It's hard to differentiate. When she did pass, there were a series of amazing events that occurred that really did indicate that she indeed is present and is around, that I won't delineate. So I decided, I'm just going to use my experience as an astral projection person and go visit her and find out what's going on. Steve, the experience of doing that made me realize that the veil between those who have passed on and those who of us that are in body form or material form as we conceive it to be, that veil is really not all that thick, and they're not really all that distant. And that was a powerful movement in my experience of what was going on. Now, I can go into the details of how I verified it and so forth and so on, because I tend to really want to have things verified, not just my imagination. But more to the point was that experience of being able to use this and say, okay, I'm going to go visit all sorts of different realms. And you talk about using astral projection to communicate with the dead. Can you share some of those experiences that you've had along those lines?
Sure, I'll be glad to. And I should point out that I have a video interview coming up at the top of the hour, which is in 5 minutes, that I'll need to prepare for. But
okay, very good.
Real briefly, I have had a lot of positive feedback about that, and that's common. People have a relative who passes away, and they miss that relative or friend, and they want to get in touch with them. And a lot of times that's what drives people to looking into things such as astral projection online, or asking around about it and stumbling upon astral projection as a tool to access someone who's passed on, for example. And so, I myself have benefited from this. My mom, as I pointed out, passed away when I was 6. My dad passed away about 9 years ago. And so having this tool to be able to communicate with them has been just a very wonderful thing. And so I have reports all the time from people. Just about a month ago, I saw someone in one of the spaces that we use to have our community chats talking about how her dad had passed away, and she was able to use astral projection to talk to him, and he didn't give her any last he didn't say any final words. She felt kind of like something was missing there. He didn't wrap it up. And so when he talked to her, he gave her the final words that he wanted to share with her, which were, of course, wonderful things about how she was a beautiful, wonderful daughter. He hoped for the best, things like that. That's what people want to hear. They want to know the person's okay, and they want to feel that love connection again, and, of course, any message that the person wants to share. And so, I hear things like that a lot.
Wonderful. Well, with that, thank you so much for joining us. Individuals, you can contact Dr. Steve G. Jones at Steve G. Jones, as well as at the Art of Astral Projection. Steve, enjoy your videotaping. Thank you so much for sharing your ideas. I'm going to keep the listeners on and walk them through an astral projection moment right this very instant. You've been wonderful. Any final departing words you'd like to share?
Well, I always like to end with this, which is a quote from the musical group America, which says, Oz never did give nothing to the Tin Man that he didn't already have. And, of course, that's a reference to the Wizard of Oz, giving a physical representation to the Tin Man of something he already had. People have to realize that they already have within them the ability to change, the ability to improve themselves, the ability to astral project, the ability to help themselves in a number of ways. But sometimes we need a gentle reminder of that, and that's where things such as hypnosis come in, and things such as programs to help you astral project come in. So I encourage people, if they need a gentle reminder of just how powerful they already are, to take advantage of these tools that exist.
Absolutely. Beautifully said. Thank you for empowering us, and have a great day, Steve. Appreciate it so much.
You too. Thank you.
Take care. Well,
You
listeners,
too.
I want you to continue on this process, because it's now your opportunity to be able to walk into an astral projection. And I want you to be able to close your eyes. So you can only do this, obviously, when you can close your eyes. Now, the form of hypnotherapy that's often used in this sort of thing involves me being able to help you relax. Dr. Steve G. Jones has a very comprehensive system, and I really do encourage you to look it up Again, the site is called theartofastralprojection.com, because that will be able to help you move into something. If this simple approach does not help you move, then the more complex approaches are available for you. And do not lose out on this. This is an incredibly powerful experience in people's lives once they're able to actually tap into it. You begin to realize that you are way more than your physical body, but you're also your physical body. You begin to realize that your physical body is so powerfully capable of interfacing with your mind and your spirit and your soul, because you can visit a connection or relationship with your physical body and then also move outside of that physical body while it rests and relaxes. And so now while I'm talking to you about that, just allow yourself to rest and relax. And employ your ability to be skeptical, because absolutely I applaud using scientific methodology or your own research methodologies. And Steve mentioned what he would recommend with a very simple approach to it, using a friend to write a note that you can go visit. There's so many ways of going about that. You're going to use your own as well, but right now allow your skepticism to kind of move aside just a little bit, like move it to another part of the room and say, I honor you, you're valid, you're reasonable, absolutely keep me attached to reality, not just in figments of my imagination, a runaway, wonderful imagination, and just allow that skepticism to move to the side. And now you kind of vision that, move back into your physical body, and just be aware of your breathing, your heart, the way your blood is surging through your veins and your arteries, the way your feet are experiencing their presence in shoes or barefoot or socks, whether your feet are up or down, if you're lying down or sitting comfortably. Just go ahead and have an experience of your room, the way the air is hitting your face, the way the light is coming through your closed eyes. Just go ahead and experience all that. And notice how comfortable it is just to be comfortable in your body. And you can have so much power just in your body and never do any of these sorts of things. And that power can be accessed with all sorts of different ways. NLP, hypnosis are two that Dr. Steve G. Jones mentions. All the tools of psychotherapy and psychology, which I utilize and have for 32 years. And so those are all available to you, and honor your body's ability to be very powerful in this particular materialistic world. You're not going to lose contact with any of that, and you want to expand and benefit that as well. Now allow your mind to kind of ponder that beyond your body, there exists unknown realms, and perhaps you've had some experiences with that. Perhaps you've had near-death experience or afterlife experiences. One that I'll just share while you're contemplating moving out of your body is when I had my tonsils out when I was 5 years old. I have this recollection clearly of seeing the nurse and the doctor as I'm hovering over them in a corner of the room.